Welcome to Ancient Mysteries. I'm your host, Ben Carter, and in today's episode we journey deep into the shadows of the Grand Canyon, where an alleged discovery in the early 20th century sparked a legend that refuses to die. Did explorers uncover ancient Egyptian artifacts hidden in a vast cave system beneath the American Southwest, or was it all an elaborate hoax buried by powerful institutions? The truth may be stranger and older than we've been told. In the early 20th century, the Grand Canyon was still largely uncharted by modern standards. While native tribes had lived around its cliffs and canyons for thousands of years, much of the inner gorge remained a wilderness few outsiders dared to explore. That began to change with the rise of American geological expeditions and surveying teams tasked with mapping the vast terrain of the American West. It was during this era of exploration, in the year 1909, that a now infamous article appeared on the front page of the Arizona Gazette. Dated April 5th, the story described a remarkable discovery made by a man named G.E. Kincaid, reportedly under the sponsorship of the Smithsonian Institution. According to the article, Kincaid had been traveling down the Colorado River when he came upon a series of steps carved into the rock wall. Following the staircase led him into a cave system that he claimed extended deep into the canyon walls, an intricate network of chambers containing relics, mummies, and artifacts that bore striking resemblance to ancient Egyptian and possibly even East Asian cultures. The article described statues resembling the Egyptian deity Osiris, copper tools of unusual design, and crypts housing preserved remains wrapped in linen. The report claimed the cavern could house over 50,000 people and was believed by Kincaid to be part of a once-inhabited subterranean city. What was even more extraordinary was that the artifacts were said to suggest a cross-cultural origin, with stylistic elements of both Egyptian and Hindu craftsmanship. This was shocking for the time, as no mainstream theory entertained the possibility of ancient Old World civilizations reaching the Americas. The article mentioned that Kincaid had notified the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., and that a Professor S.A. Jordan was allegedly dispatched to continue the excavation. Yet despite the bold claims of the article, no official records, photographs, or follow-up reports ever emerged from the Smithsonian. Over time, both Kincaid and Professor Jordan seemingly vanished from historical record, leaving only the newspaper article behind. Historians and archaeologists quickly dismissed the story as sensationalism or outright fabrication. However, questions lingered. Why would a reputable paper publish such an elaborate hoax? And if the Smithsonian truly had no involvement, why did their archives hold no reference at all to Kincaid, Jordan, or any related expedition? The canyon itself remains a restricted area in many of the regions mentioned in the article, with certain zones closed permanently to the public under federal control. Long before this story entered the headlines, indigenous tribes like the Hopi, Zuni, and Navajo had passed down oral traditions speaking of underground dwellings and a mysterious people who lived beneath the canyon walls. Some even referenced a great migration from the east, and ancestral beings who emerged from the underworld into the daylight world through natural openings in the earth. In light of those ancient traditions, the story of a hidden city in the Grand Canyon began to sound less like wild speculation, and more like something buried both literally and historically. The heart of the mystery lies within that Arizona Gazette article published on the 5th of April in the year 1909. Though just one page among many in a local newspaper, its contents ignited a legend that refuses to fade more than a century later. The article claimed that the discovery was made in a remote section of the Grand Canyon, known as Marble Canyon, a region noted for its steep cliffs and winding passages. This location, if accurate, was extremely difficult to reach, especially in the early 20th century, lending a strange credibility to Kincaid's detailed description of what he claimed to have found there. The article described a vast underground chamber system, including large halls supported by stone pillars, storage rooms filled with copper implements, and even a temple-like structure adorned with statues and hieroglyphic-style carvings. One chamber was said to house rows of mummified remains, most of them smaller in stature than modern humans, wrapped in cloth and preserved with a care that resembled ancient Egyptian funerary practices. The level of organization and purpose in the site, according to Kincaid's account, pointed to a civilization with advanced engineering and spiritual customs. What made the article especially compelling were its claims about artifacts with supposed Eastern origins. Items allegedly bore similarities to Egyptian and Indian designs, with the cave containing a statue thought to be of a seated Buddha. Descriptions of the layout included a central crypt, circular ventilation-like shafts, and long corridors that twisted and descended into what was portrayed as an extensive and organized underground complex. According to Kincaid, the air within the tunnels was dry and still, preserving the contents in remarkable condition. The idea that a cave system of such scale could remain hidden within the Grand Canyon was not entirely implausible. The region is riddled with natural caves and has numerous areas that are still underexplored. Kincaid's assertion that he stumbled across it by accident while rafting down the Colorado River only adds to the allure. The river has carved deep channels into the canyon over millions of years, revealing labyrinths of stone that remain inaccessible to all but the most determined explorers. There are also references in the article to petroglyphs and inscriptions that were said to be undeciphered, as well as metallic tablets engraved with unfamiliar symbols. Kincaid was quoted as saying that the discovery almost conclusively proves that the race which inhabited this mysterious cavern came from the Orient. Such a statement, made during a time of great archaeological enthusiasm and Eurocentric historical models, would have been radical. The notion that ancient Egyptians or Asians could have crossed the Pacific Ocean and established a colony in the American Southwest was not only outside the bounds of accepted history, it was considered heretical. The article ended by claiming that further studies were underway and that the Smithsonian Institution would be releasing findings in due time. Yet no such publication ever materialized. No official photographs, no academic journals, no maps, just silence. The only trace of the event remains the original Arizona Gazette article, still archived, still quoted, still investigated, and still raising more questions than answers. Despite the skepticism that surrounds the story, several physical and circumstantial clues have kept the legend of the Grand Canyon's Egyptian caves alive. Researchers and independent explorers have pointed to multiple inconsistencies and unexplained restrictions in the region that seem to support the idea that something may have been discovered and then deliberately concealed. First, there is the matter of the specific location described in the article. The area allegedly containing the cave system is within a particularly rugged and isolated portion of the Grand Canyon, where access is heavily restricted. Much of the surrounding terrain has been designated as off-limits to the public, controlled either by federal agencies or native tribal authorities. While the need for preservation and safety explains some of these closures, the specific zone linked to Kincaid's story remains under particularly tight control. It is not just closed to casual hikers, it is off-limits even to many research expeditions. This has only added fuel to the theory that something is being hidden. Additionally, certain formations within the Grand Canyon have been given unusual names that have raised eyebrows among theorists and researchers. Names such as Tower of Ra, Isis Temple, Osiris Temple, and Shiva Temple appear throughout the official topographical maps of the canyon. These names were given during early geological surveys, long before the 1909 article was published. Some researchers argue that this nomenclature suggests either the discovery of culturally significant features or a symbolic connection that predates the article's claims. If nothing Egyptian or Eastern was ever found in the region, why the fascination with naming so many of its landmarks after deities from ancient Egypt and India? Beyond the naming and access restrictions, there are additional physical features of the Grand Canyon that defy easy explanation. Photographs and accounts from private explorers describe high cliff walls with square-shaped voids or darkened entrances that appear inaccessible without climbing equipment. Some even claim to have spotted unusual openings through high-powered lenses or drones, only to find the areas unreachable or mysteriously closed upon further approach. One of the more curious pieces of evidence comes from the Smithsonian institution itself, or rather the lack of evidence. Multiple independent researchers have filed Freedom of Information Act requests in attempts to verify the existence of G.E. Kincaid, Professor S.A. Jordan, or any expedition matching the article's description. In every case, the response has been the same. No records found. There are no personnel files, no expedition reports, and no artifacts catalogued from that region during that time period. For a discovery that supposedly involved thousands of items, including mummies and metal tools, this complete absence of documentation strikes many as suspicious. Those who support the idea of a cover-up often point to the fact that the Smithsonian has historically controlled narratives about North American archaeology. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, the institution actively collected, relocated, and in some cases destroyed artifacts and burial sites associated with indigenous peoples and anomalous finds. Critics argue that any discovery that challenged the prevailing view of American prehistory, particularly one involving foreign civilizations arriving before Columbus, would have been swiftly suppressed. Though no publicly acknowledged expedition has ever confirmed the existence of Kincaid's cave, the lingering questions, unusual access restrictions, and unexplained historical gaps have continued to attract attention. The Grand Canyon, vast and still not fully explored, holds secrets within its walls. Whether those secrets include a hidden chamber of Egyptian relics is unknown, but the physical clues remain embedded in the stone. Mainstream archaeology and conventional historians have long maintained that there is no evidence of ancient Egyptians or any Old World civilizations ever reaching the Americas before the voyages of Christopher Columbus in the 15th century. According to accepted academic frameworks, no Egyptian, Phoenician, or Indian explorers had the maritime technology necessary to cross the vast Atlantic or Pacific Oceans, nor the motive to do so. The belief is that civilizations in the ancient world developed independently, with only limited contact between neighboring regions. The official view also holds that the Grand Canyon has never yielded any archaeological discoveries resembling those described in the Arizona Gazette article. The Smithsonian Institution, often cited in conspiracy claims, has repeatedly denied involvement in any such expedition, and no verified records of G.E. Kincaid or Professor S.A. Jordan have ever surfaced in their historical rosters. These denials have been echoed by park authorities and university researchers, who characterize the story as a hoax or a case of early sensational journalism. Many scholars point to the context of the early 20th century, when newspaper articles were often used to attract readers with bold and speculative headlines. The era's fascination with Egyptology, sparked by discoveries like the tomb of Tutankhamun and the ongoing excavation of Luxor, created a popular appetite for stories linking ancient Egypt to far-flung parts of the world. It was not unusual for newspapers to publish exaggerated or entirely fabricated accounts during this time, especially when they involved ancient relics, lost cities, or mysterious explorers. Academic institutions also note that if such a vast underground city had truly been discovered, subsequent evidence would have likely surfaced in the years that followed. The Grand Canyon has been extensively mapped and studied by geologists, archaeologists, and explorers for over a century. From satellite imaging to field surveys, the area has undergone detailed scrutiny, and no verifiable signs of an ancient foreign settlement have been documented. According to conventional scholars, there is simply no physical evidence. No artifacts, inscriptions, human remains, or architectural structures that support the claims of an Egyptian cave within the canyon. Furthermore, linguistic experts assert that there has never been a credible translation or photographic record of the alleged hieroglyphs described in the article. The claims of statues resembling Osiris or objects resembling Hindu artifacts remain unsubstantiated. Without photographs, physical artifacts, or academic analysis, they argue the account is nothing more than a story. Historians also emphasize the importance of oral traditions from indigenous cultures in the region. While native stories do reference underworld realms and subterranean passageways, scholars argue that these should be understood as spiritual metaphors rather than literal references to ancient underground cities. To take these traditions as evidence of foreign settlements, they say, is to misunderstand or misappropriate native beliefs. Still, for every denial or dismissal, there is a lingering sense that something does not quite fit. The absence of evidence, while central to the conventional argument, is not the same as proof of absence, and when the historical record is missing pages, or when those pages have possibly been removed, the mystery remains unresolved. While mainstream archaeologists may stand firm on the official story, the Grand Canyon legend continues to invite speculation from those who believe history may be deeper and stranger than we are allowed to know. Despite the firm stance taken by mainstream scholars, cracks in the official narrative continue to draw attention. The story of the Grand Canyon Cave raises a series of lingering questions that have yet to be satisfactorily answered. Perhaps the most glaring is the disappearance of the key figures involved. G.E. Kincaid, supposedly a seasoned explorer and former soldier, left behind no trace beyond the Arizona Gazette article. There are no birth records, census entries, or obituaries. For a man who supposedly made one of the most astonishing discoveries in North American history, his complete erasure from the public record is, at the very least, suspicious. The same is true for Professor S.A. Jordan, the man reportedly sent by the Smithsonian to conduct the formal excavation. His name does not appear in any published Smithsonian documentation, and no academic papers or references to his work exist in university or museum archives. If both men were real and involved in a sanctioned archaeological operation, their absence from all historical and institutional records defies logic. Even more curious is the lack of follow-up from other newspapers or scientific journals at the time. In the early 1900s, stories about ancient civilizations, mummies, and lost cities regularly made headlines. The idea that such a massive discovery, one that allegedly included thousands of artifacts and an underground temple, received no further coverage raises difficult questions. If the story was a hoax, why did no one expose it? And if it was real, why did no one pursue it? Another anomaly lies in the geography of the site. The exact location of Kincaid's cave was never revealed in the article, only described vaguely as being in a remote area above the Colorado River. However, several independent researchers have attempted to triangulate the area based on the article's descriptions. They found that the closest matching region lies within a zone of the Grand Canyon that is now classified as a no-fly zone and restricted from public access. While the federal government cites environmental and safety concerns for these restrictions, skeptics argue that this conveniently prevents aerial surveys or drone footage of the exact area Kincaid described. A few modern explorers have attempted to breach these zones. In the early 2000s, several amateur researchers reported reaching areas near the suspected location. They claimed to find unusual cave entrances high on the cliff walls, but were either turned back by park authorities or found the terrain too dangerous to continue. No official expeditions have been permitted since. The Grand Canyon, for all its openness to tourism, contains pockets of land that are off-limits, places that cannot be reached without special permits or military clearance. Beyond the physical barriers, there is also the question of motive. Why would a story like this be suppressed? One explanation offered by independent researchers is that such a discovery would undermine key tenets of established history. If Egyptian or Asian explorers reached North America thousands of years before Columbus, it would challenge the foundations of archaeology, anthropology, and even national identity. The implications would be global. Textbooks would need to be rewritten. Chronologies would be re-examined. Cultural narratives would shift. For powerful institutions, the simplest response to such a threat is silence. What remains, then, is a void, an information gap that cannot be bridged by denial alone. The official channels offer no data, no photographs, and no names. But the questions refuse to go away. What did G.E. Kincaid really see in the Grand Canyon? And why has the world been told to forget it? In the absence of mainstream acknowledgement, the mystery of the Grand Canyon's alleged Egyptian cave has become a fertile ground for fringe theories and speculative research. These theories, while lacking formal verification, attempt to fill the void left by official denials with possibilities that are, in some cases, as compelling as they are controversial. One of the most enduring fringe theories suggests that the cave system was not only real, but was part of a much older and global network of civilizations that predate recorded history. According to this view, ancient advanced societies, possibly originating from Atlantis, Lemuria, or other lost continents, spread across the globe long before the rise of Sumer or Egypt. These cultures, proponents argue, had access to sophisticated technologies, including stone-cutting tools, navigation systems, and possibly even energy manipulation devices. The Grand Canyon Cave, in this context, would have been a remote outpost or refuge of such a civilization, preserved in the vastness of the canyon long after the main culture had vanished. Some have drawn connections between the cave story and other mysterious megalithic sites around the world. The high-precision stonework described by Kincaid resembles the polygonal masonry seen in Peru's Sacsayhuaman or Egypt's Valley Temple. The statues reportedly found in the cave, some said to resemble Osiris, others bearing an Eastern design, suggest to these researchers a cultural blend that does not fit neatly into academic timelines. This mixing of iconography has led to suggestions of either a globally connected ancient world or a shared origin story that modern archaeology has yet to uncover. Other theories step even further into the speculative. Some propose that the cave was a kind of ancient library or energy chamber, designed to preserve sacred knowledge or even manipulate the Earth's electromagnetic field. The temple-like structure mentioned in the article is sometimes interpreted as a stargate or portal, possibly symbolic, possibly functional, designed by ancient priest-scientists who understood natural forces in ways we no longer grasp. There are also interpretations grounded in esoteric traditions. In certain circles of occult or theosophical belief, the Grand Canyon is considered one of several sacred sites on Earth that correspond to ancient power centers. These locations, sometimes called Earth chakras, are believed to be positioned along ley lines or planetary energy grids. From this viewpoint, the cave was never meant to be found by the public, and its concealment serves a larger metaphysical purpose, to keep forbidden knowledge from falling into unprepared hands. Some theories even suggest that the beings who constructed the cave were not human. The preserved mummies, reportedly smaller in stature, have been linked by some researchers to the legends of star people or otherworldly visitors found in Native American oral traditions. The Hopi, for instance, speak of ant people who lived underground and helped humanity survive past cataclysms. In this context, the Grand Canyon Cave is not just a historical anomaly. It is a remnant of a time when human and non-human entities may have coexisted or shared knowledge. While these fringe ideas are not embraced by academia, they persist because they attempt to explain the many unresolved elements of the story, the missing records, the restricted zones, the symbolic naming of nearby landmarks, and the eerie silence that surrounds the entire episode. Whether seen as myth, metaphor, or literal history, the legend of the Grand Canyon's lost cave continues to inspire those who believe that our past may be far more mysterious than we have been told. As the layers of this mystery unfold, the symbolic and cultural implications begin to emerge with deeper resonance. Even if one chooses not to accept the literal existence of an Egyptian cave buried within the Grand Canyon, the persistent narrative reflects a collective unease with the historical record as we know it. Why are we so drawn to the idea that ancient civilizations may have had contact with one another across oceans, thousands of years before modern historians believe it was possible? What does that say about our need to connect, to rediscover, or perhaps to reclaim something long lost? The Grand Canyon itself is more than a geological marvel. To the Hopi, Zuni, Havasupai, and other native tribes, it is a sacred place. They do not view it as simply a canyon, but as a place of emergence, of spiritual significance, and of origin. In Hopi tradition, the Grand Canyon is considered a gateway from the lower worlds, a portal through which their ancestors emerged after surviving the destruction of earlier worlds. Within this view, the concept of a subterranean realm populated by mysterious beings is not fantasy. It is a sacred teaching. The convergence of this sacred narrative with the Kincaid legend adds a layer of complexity. Was the Arizona Gazette article, regardless of its factual accuracy, tapping into a much older and more powerful story? One that predates printed newspapers and academic journals? Even if no cave were ever discovered, the existence of a cultural memory about underground dwellings and ancient star beings persists in indigenous oral history. It is this overlap that keeps the story alive in a different way, not through carbon dating or formal excavation, but through myth, story, and intuition. There is also the symbolism of caves themselves. Across cultures, caves represent the unknown, the hidden, the initiation space. From the Oracle of Delphi to the mysteries of Eleusis, from the underground pyramids of Mesoamerica to the cave drawings of prehistoric Europe, humanity has long associated underground chambers with sacred knowledge, transformation, and otherworldly contact. The Kincaid story, whether literally true or not, fits neatly into this timeless archetype. The descent into darkness, the confrontation with forgotten knowledge, and the return, if one returns at all. If we accept this framework, then the legend of the Grand Canyon cave becomes less about whether Egyptian artifacts are buried under Arizona and more about what we have buried in ourselves. Our desire to believe in the cave, to imagine it still waiting in some hidden crevice of the canyon, reveals a hunger for mystery, for the possibility that not all is known and not all is lost. The story also invites reflection on who controls the past. When institutions like the Smithsonian are accused of concealing discoveries, whether justified or not, it reflects a deeper cultural anxiety about gatekeeping, censorship, and the shaping of collective memory. Who decides what is real and what is myth? What happens to knowledge that does not fit the model? These are not just questions for archaeologists. They are questions for all of us. Whether symbolic, spiritual, or historical, the implications of the Grand Canyon cave story extend far beyond the cliffs and rivers of the American Southwest. They reach into the heart of our species' longing to know where we came from, what was forgotten, and what might still be waiting to be uncovered. As we examine the threads woven throughout this story, a pattern begins to emerge, one that blurs the line between myth, memory, and mystery. The Grand Canyon cave legend persists not because of what is known, but because of what remains unknown. The absence of evidence has not closed the door on belief. In many ways, it has left it wide open. Several key elements continue to sustain public interest in the tale. The Arizona Gazette article, despite its singularity, was highly detailed. The vivid descriptions of mummies, artifacts, and massive underground chambers go far beyond what one might expect from a fabricated story. It reads not like a casual rumor, but like the dispatch of someone reporting a structured excavation. The references to copper weapons, unfamiliar hieroglyphics, and statues resembling deities from both Egypt and India imply either an elaborate hoax or a report based on actual observations. For many, it is difficult to dismiss the specificity of the claims as mere fiction. Then there is the geographical context. The Grand Canyon remains one of the least explored regions in the continental United States. Its vastness, its treacherous terrain, and its countless unexplored crevices create the perfect conditions for secrets to remain hidden. Even with modern tools like satellite imaging and drone technology, large portions of the canyon are difficult to access or permanently restricted. If an underground structure existed, it is entirely possible that it could remain hidden in plain sight, protected by remoteness and bureaucracy. The institutional silence also speaks volumes. The Smithsonian's lack of comment beyond denying involvement has created a vacuum of information. Rather than resolving the mystery, the denials have only amplified suspicion. The absence of any documentation related to Kincaid or Professor Jordan suggests either total fabrication or something more deliberately obscured. And for every researcher who accepts the former, there are others who suspect the latter. Modern interest in the cave has grown alongside the rise of alternative archaeology and citizen exploration. Independent researchers, equipped with digital tools and free from academic constraints, continue to search for the cave's location using historical maps, geological clues, and satellite data. Their work has led to compelling discoveries, such as unusual cave entrances visible only from certain angles, anomalies in elevation patterns, and regions with ancient petroglyphs depicting beings with elongated heads and strange regalia. Though these signs are far from proof, they fuel the belief that something has yet to be revealed. There is also the psychological element, the allure of the forbidden. Tales of hidden chambers, lost knowledge, and secret societies have always captivated the human imagination. When combined with institutions accused of gatekeeping the truth, the story gains symbolic weight. The cave becomes more than a physical space. It becomes a metaphor for what lies beneath the surface of accepted history. A place where truths may sleep, waiting to be uncovered by those brave or curious enough to look. Whether or not the cave ever existed, the legend has taken on a life of its own. It has become part of our modern mythology, standing beside stories of Atlantis, Lemuria, and the ancient architects of impossible monuments. Its power lies not in its verification, but in its capacity to awaken questions about history, about belief, and about the fragility of the narratives we are told to accept as truth. The story of the Grand Canyon's Egyptian cave sits at the crossroads of possibility and silence. It begins with a single newspaper article from over 100 years ago, an account so extraordinary that it should have sparked a wave of discovery, debate, and academic scrutiny. Instead, it was met with a curious void. No confirmation, no refutation, just silence. And that silence may speak louder than words. If G.E. Kincaid's account was fiction, it was fiction presented with precision, rich detail, and context rooted in real geography and existing cultural traditions. If it was real, then it represents one of the most important historical discoveries ever made, one deliberately hidden from public knowledge. The canyon, ancient and unyielding, holds its secrets well. Its massive cliffs, its deep ravines, and its winding river corridors have witnessed millennia of change. Civilizations have risen and fallen around it, and still it endures. The cave, real or not, has become a symbol of hidden history, a portal not only into a possibly forgotten past, but into the uncertainty that surrounds the way history is constructed, preserved, and policed. It reflects our desire to know more than we are told, to imagine a world richer, older, and more connected than conventional models allow. And it reminds us that sometimes what is most powerful is not what is known, but what is unknowable. Every unexplored cave, every unexamined petroglyph, and every vanished figure like Kincaid becomes part of a larger mosaic of mystery. Whether we interpret the legend as metaphor, suppressed truth, or a forgotten chapter of a much deeper past, we are left with the same unsettling question: what else has been buried? Beneath layers of earth, beneath layers of bureaucracy, and beneath the stories we have been taught to believe. There are no definitive answers in this tale, and perhaps that is what makes it so enduring. The canyon is not just a physical space, it is a landscape of memory, myth, and potential. Whether the Egyptian cave exists in stone or only in story, its power lies in the questions it raises about the limits of our knowledge and the boundaries of belief. Thanks for listening. This has been Ancient Mysteries. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, gain access to bonus content, and unlock our entire library of video podcasts, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now.